Welcome to Beyond the Call, where history, leadership, and heroism come alive. Today's story explores Technical Sergeant Beauford Anderson at Kakazu Ridge in 1945, a powerful account of courage and responsibility in combat. If you enjoy learning more about military history and extraordinary individuals, you can find more articles, podcasts, and resources at trackpads.com. By the spring of 1945, the Battle of Okinawa had become one of the most brutal and costly campaigns of the Pacific War. American forces were pushing against a dense belt of Japanese defenses built around ridges, ravines, and stone tombs that had been turned into bunkers. Kakazu Ridge was part of that line, a jagged rise of ground where every terrace seemed to hide a machine gun or mortar team. For the infantrymen of the 96th Infantry Division, progress came in yards, not miles, and every yard was paid for with blood. The ridge was not just a feature on a map. It was a place where small groups of soldiers suddenly found themselves holding the fate of a whole sector in their hands. Beauford Theodore Anderson came to that ridge from the quiet towns of Wisconsin. Born in Eagle in 1922 and later raised in Soldiers Grove, he grew up during the Great Depression in a world where families survived through hard work and mutual support. When the United States entered the war, young men from communities like his felt the pull of duty and the promise of a wider world. Anderson enlisted in the United States Army in 1942 and soon moved from farm country to training grounds and barracks. Beyond the Call is the Monday feature of Dispatch, U.S. Military History magazine. That connection between ordinary hometown life and extraordinary combat would remain at the heart of his story. In training, the Army discovered that Anderson was steady, practical, and willing to shoulder responsibility. He learned the full range of infantry weapons, but he was especially tied to the heavier guns and mortars that gave a company its backbone of firepower. By mid-war, he was serving with the 381st Infantry Regiment of the 96th Infantry Division in the Southwest Pacific. On Leyte, in the Philippines, he fought through jungle rain and close-range firefights, earning a Bronze Star for heroic service and gaining a hard-earned understanding of how quickly a battle could shift. By the time his regiment landed on Okinawa, he was a technical sergeant in the weapons platoon of Company A, trusted to place guns where they could make the most difference when the enemy struck. The days before the crucial night at Kakazu Ridge were a grind of digging, firing, and waiting. Company A carved shallow positions into the rocky hillside, threading its line among shell holes and stone tombs that dotted the slope. Anderson and his weapons platoon wrestled with mortars and ammunition, trying to position their guns so they could cover likely avenues of approach. Everyone understood the rhythm of the campaign. American troops pushed forward during the day, and Japanese forces counterattacked at night, using darkness, local knowledge, and carefully sighted weapons to hit exposed flanks. As dusk fell and the ridge sank into shadow, the men knew another test was coming soon. The sense of strain was constant. In the pre-dawn hours, that test arrived. The enemy opened with a barrage of artillery and mortar fire that walked up and down the hillside, smashing into foxholes and churning the already broken ground. Machine guns and rifles joined in, sweeping along the terraces as Japanese infantry closed in under cover of the bombardment. The main weight of the attack fell against the flank where Anderson's section stood, the very edge of the company line. If that edge buckled, enemy soldiers could slip behind the position and strike the company from the rear. Anderson had only moments to act, and those moments mattered. Seeing how quickly the fire was closing in, he chose to move his men rather than leave them to be cut apart in place. Just behind their positions stood the opening of a stone tomb cut into the hillside, with thick walls and a narrow entrance that could shield them from fragments and bullets. Anderson ordered his men into that shelter, pushing them toward safety while the attack built around them. Once he was sure they were inside, he turned back toward the oncoming assault instead of following them. Alone in the open, armed with his carbine, he faced a force that greatly outnumbered him. It was a deliberate choice to stand where the danger was greatest. The first wave of attackers came at close range, shouting as they rushed across the rocks and terraces toward his position. Anderson fired as fast as he could, his carbine cracking in short bursts, picking out targets in the flicker of muzzle flashes and explosions. In the chaos, an enemy mortar shell landed near him and failed to explode, a heavy dud lying among the shattered stones. Many soldiers might have ignored it or tried to move away. Anderson did the opposite. He grabbed the round, pulled out its safety device, and hurled it back into the attacking group, where it detonated in their midst and tore a gap in the charge. Near his position was a wooden box filled with additional mortar rounds. Anderson dragged it close and saw another way to turn the enemy's weapons against them. One by one, he pulled the safety devices from the shells, struck their bases on a rock to arm them, and threw them like oversized grenades into the advancing soldiers. The hillside became a deadly zone of hand-thrown explosions, each blast ripping into tightly packed groups and smashing enemy machine gun and knee mortar teams before they could fully deploy. Between throws, he fired his carbine whenever attackers tried to slip through. It was a brutal, improvised defense, driven by quick thinking and sheer determination. Shrapnel from an explosion tore into Anderson during the fight, wounding him badly and adding pain and blood loss to the chaos around him. Many would have crawled back to cover or called for help. He stayed where he was, continuing to throw shells and fire his weapon until the attack began to falter. At last, the pressure on the flank eased, and the enemy started to pull back, leaving dead and broken weapons scattered across the slope. Only when it was clear that the immediate danger had passed did he withdraw from his exposed position. Even then, he did not seek evacuation. He made his way to the company command post to report what had happened and to confirm that the flank was still secure. The Medal of Honor citation that later honored his actions uses formal phrases that carry a lot of meaning. It speaks of conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, which in everyday language means that he chose to do something far riskier than his orders required. Moving his men to shelter and then facing the attack alone reflects that choice. The citation also notes that the pre-dawn counterattack struck with great force against his company's flank, emphasizing how vulnerable that part of the line was. Another key phrase notes that he fought against overwhelming odds, a reminder that he did not stop a small patrol, but a determined assault by many attackers. The final lines, describing how he forced the enemy to withdraw and removed a serious threat to the company, tie his personal courage directly to the survival of the unit. On the tactical level, his stand helped keep Company A's foothold on Kakazu Ridge from crumbling. If the flank had given way, the company and perhaps neighboring units might have been driven off the slope, forcing the regiment to regroup and fight for the same ground again. Instead, the line held, and the division could continue its slow advance through one of the strongest defensive belts on the island. Beyond the numbers of enemy soldiers killed or weapons destroyed, his actions saved time, reduced the likelihood of further casualties in renewed attacks, and denied the enemy an opportunity to exploit the terrain. On Okinawa, where every position was costly, preventing a local disaster was a major contribution. It truly mattered. His conduct also left a mark on the people around him. Fellow soldiers quickly learned what he had done, and the story of the technical sergeant who stayed outside the tomb, hurled live mortar rounds by hand, and refused evacuation spread through the unit. That kind of example carried moral weight in a campaign filled with exhaustion and fear. It showed that leadership was not limited to officers, and that a non-commissioned officer could, in a single dark hour, hold the line through a mix of clear thinking, aggressiveness, and concern for his men. Those who served with him saw more than an award. They saw a standard for how to act when everything is on the line. After the war ended, Anderson returned to civilian life. trading the shattered slopes of Kakazu Ridge for the calmer landscapes of home. Like many veterans, he moved into work, family, and community roles that could never fully erase the memories of combat, but gave them a different setting. He was known not only as a Medal of Honor recipient, but also as a neighbor and citizen who had once faced terrible danger on behalf of others. Over time, his name appeared on plaques, in local stories, and in the permanent roll of honor that preserves the actions of those who received the nation's highest military decoration. His grave, and any memorials that carry his story, give later visitors a place to pause and reflect. When we look back on Beauford Anderson's actions at Kakazu Ridge, we see more than a dramatic scene of one man against many. We see a chain of choices shaped by upbringing, training, experience, and character, all converging in a few violent minutes on a hillside in Okinawa. He protected his men, improvised with the tools at hand, and accepted severe personal risk to keep a fragile line from breaking. His story invites us to think about what courage and responsibility look like in our own time, far from the noise of battle. Remembering him as a full person, not only as a name in a citation, keeps the human side of history alive and honors the quiet strength that carried him beyond the call of duty.